Oh, broke that table, man.
Oh, jeez. Holy moly.
I didn't have the thing for so I have to. Okay. Aloha and welcome to the informational briefing of the Senate Special Accountability Committee on Procurement. It is Thursday, August 12th, 1 o'clock p.m. We are in conference room 211 with members of the committee. Presenters are joining us on Zoom, except for Senator Fabella, who is also Zooming in. Aloha. So I'm Sharon Moriwaki, chair of this special committee, and joining me are members Senator Kidani, Senator Dela Cruz, who will be back shortly, Senator Kim, and Senator Fabella, who is Zooming in. Also joining us, I've asked Bonnie Kahakui, our interim state procurement officer, to join us, and she's joining us by phone if she has questions. First, a few housekeeping announcements. This briefing is being streamed live on YouTube. You can find links to the briefings and the presentation documents on the live and on-demand video page. Oh, here's Senator Kim joining us. Capitol website under the Special Committee on Procurement webpage. This committee's charge is to improve the state procurement and contracting policies and procedures of the state. The focus, how we better serve the public by procuring goods, services, and construction more quickly through clear, fair, consistent standards. We build on the work of the Government Operations Committee last session. Two measures signed into law provide the background of these briefings. One, requiring all departments to evaluate and post performance and construction contracts so all departments can benefit from the experiences of others to award the best performing contractors for our state work. And second, on bid protests, setting deadlines for departments to assess and decide on protests. This is not to preclude protests, but to improve procurement and use of these protests, if not frivolous, to improve our procedures. Superintendent, I see you. Superintendent, aloha. Congratulations. How are you doing your first few days here? Enjoying it, I'm sure. Superintendent Keith Hayashi and his team will brief us on their procurement and bid protest procedures, the procurement staffing and training, and the challenges and suggested recommendations for addressing them. I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent Hayashi, and if you can first introduce the members of your team who are with us today. Aloha.
Aloha and good afternoon, Chair Moriwaki and committee members. I'm Keith Hayashi, Interim Superintendent. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the Department of Education's procurement and contracting procedures. The department is committed to spending public funds judiciously to best serve our students and public schools, with some flexibility afforded to us, which we know is a privilege. I take my role as the department's Chief Procurement Officer seriously, and I'm continuing to learn more about this important responsibility. I have my team here to present on the requested topic areas and answer any questions the committee members may have. With me today are Brian Hallett, Chief Financial Officer and Assistant Superintendent for the Office of Fiscal Services. Randy Tanaka, Assistant Superintendent for the Office of Facilities and Operations. Lois Mao, Procurement and Contracts Director under the Office of Fiscal Services. And Christian Budd, Procurement and Distribution Specialist under the Office of Facilities and Operations. Thank you very much for inviting us to share today.
Thank you. Are you turning this over to someone?
Yes, I'm turning it over to Assistant Superintendent Randall Tanaka.
Thank you, Superintendent. And aloha, Chair Moriwaki. Thank you for your time. I will share my screen on the PowerPoint. I take a little side path on this. The PowerPoint is fairly text intensive, and at your pleasure, if you could, I'd like to jump to the high points. I have been observing the previous two hearings. So I know there's questions that you would like to get to immediately, but I will share the screen now and go from there. Is that fine, Chair Moriwaki?
Yes, I think if you can tell us what your procurement procedures are first, the flow, and then go into questions, that would be fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Fundamentally, the branches that are involved primarily in procurement on the construction side is our planning, our project management, and that is guided by our project controls division, which Christian Butt leads that division. He has been in procurement for over 24 years and 3 different departments with the state of Hawaii. So the wealth of knowledge he has is extraordinary. He is by training a legal professional, has a law degree. So that really helps us in our process. But really in the process, it's 3 fundamental areas. First of all, we follow the procurement, the 103D, to its letter, and that guides us in our procurement process. And Chris really leads that check and balance. From a controls standpoint, clearly we do training on an ongoing basis. We also guided by our workflow reviews when we go from planning to project management to construction management. We watch judiciously and review the flow. And then we have the authorization process, which is multi-step. The delegation of authority has been, from the superintendent, has been assigned to me. So I'm the last person that signs off on the procurement. We are more focused on construction projects. That is the larger part of our budget in the procurement area. The other area we're very focused on is really issues that either detain us, slow our process down, cause escalation in costs. And those areas really fall in protests, staffing load, consultants that we use. Transparency is critical, and we do that through the CPT system that all legislators have access to. And from time to time, when you ask for specific information, that's the source that we pull it from. The other area that is of great concern to us ongoing are change orders. Change orders occur when we have poor or limited scope of the work. We have some unknown elements that come into the project, which could be the discovery of bones on the site, water pipes or electrical pipes that come through the project that we are not aware of, and we have to stop and get a consultation on it. There are escalation costs, which we have held the line on, but in recent months, because of COVID, our cost for material is escalating significantly. Timing for us in terms of when we can do the work on the campuses primarily is focused on the summer periods, so we not interfere with the activities and education of our schools. So that's really the issues that we focus on all the time. We've found ways to make improvements in the reduction of change orders by doing primarily 2 things. One is called JOC, which is Job Ordering Contracting. We've had this program for 2 years now. It started with really roofing. We needed immediate response. So what we have is a pre-qualified list of contractors that we can immediately send to the job site. The value proposition to that is speed and cost. And like I said, it started in 2019, primarily for roofing. We also have a new program that we're developing now called MATOC. And these programs are not unique to us. It's programs that have been carried across the United States, and we're just taking advantage of that process. So that's the 30,000-foot view. You should also know that there's two branches of procurement, one that is under the management of Brian Hallett and Lois, and one under the management of Office of Facilities Operations and what we call project control. Thank you.
Members, questions?
Can you just go over the two, you said you have two areas, the two branches, or explain the difference?
I'm sorry, Senator Kim, I didn't hear.
Your last statement about it having two places.
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Yeah. Yeah, so one is for goods and services in Mr. Hallett's shop,
Okay.
and the other one is in our shop in
More
Office of
construction.
Facilities.
So that would be
Yes.
more construction side, right?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
I have a question on change orders. I see the Office of Facilities contracts, and I don't know if we've got the right form here, but it doesn't have the information on change orders, and you mentioned you do have change orders, and we want to know what is your experience with that, and how are you managing that? Do you have that information? Because our chart doesn't have it.
Yeah, and thank you for that. On the bottom of those spreadsheets are two footnotes. And that footnote explains, it's the second tab, I believe that's the right worksheet. The second tab, and you go to the bottom, it footnotes those two columns. I think the question was, how many change orders per project, and the length of time,
Yes,
if I'm
Yes.
correct.
and we don't
Okay.
see that information on these charts.
Yeah, there's a column for change orders, but it's blank.
Yes, it like, there's asterisks in it, right? And I think that's the footnote
No,
to
the
the bottom.
asterisk is
No.
under extensions.
Yeah.
The asterisk
I've
is
got-
extensions, it's not under change orders.
Okay, I have Chris Butt in another room, and he'll answer that for us.
Yeah, the whole column is blank. Of course, we want to see that, because that
Yes.
kind of points to,
I think it's
some
a
problems.
We want to see it on the same page, we don't want to see it on a separate page.
That may be the whole sheet they have. Okay, if you don't mind, Chris will work on that right now. We think it's a technical glitch that you may have the wrong sheet, right, an older sheet, but we'll go check on that right now.
There's 3 columns that are lacking information. It's the project time period, the number of change orders, and the number of extensions on all of your facilities management contracts.
I'm sorry, number of change
The
orders.
period, the time period for the contract, the number of change orders, and the number of extensions. Those 3 columns have no understandable data in
Ours
it.
have, so.
Some have asterisks and,
Some have numbers.
yeah, number signs, but no information. If we could have that, or send it to us or email it to us, that would be helpful.
I do see numbers in some of the columns where it says
Or the
extensions.
two.
The
of-
beginning
Send
Some,
it
a
Yeah, like
few,
page 6, there's
Send that.
numbers, and
it
Send
doesn't
it
sound
more
right.
about your-
It doesn't sound complete.
there's, 5. So I don't know if those got merged.
Senator, we will be sending that to you immediately.
Okay, thank you.
Can you explain what indefinite quantity contract? You have a number of them.
IDIQs, indefinite quantity contracts. How many of those are?
No, what are they?
Oh, so it's like what we call the job program. So we pre-select contractors through a RFP process, and depending on the work that is needed to be done, there's no limitation for the services that they can provide. So it's fundamentally an open contract, and what that helps us with is facilitating the speed. So the roofing contract, when we first did the JOC program, allowed us to respond to the schools in a very quick fashion. And roofing, it started with roofing because of the leak problems we were having. So this JOC program, once again, is a national program that my Ox service guy, Ricky Fujitani, discovered and say, this is a good method for us to be cost effective and fast. And so we've applied that. I think we've done, the last number I saw was nearly 700 projects under the JOC area. We expanded it to plumbing, electrical, fencing, a number of different services that we would need immediately.
And how long are these so-called contracts for?
I think the length of term is 2 years,
Okay.
and then we review it all the time in terms of performance.
Okay.
I will tell you that not all the contractors have performed, so they get dropped off the list.
Okay. And do you utilize these contracts and contractors to do other major work beyond the scope of just, those things needed to get done? Like say they're patching roofs, and say you need to replace the entire roof. Would they be the ones, or would you have to go out to bid on that?
That would probably go out to bid on the magnitude of the project.
Okay, so you do that.
Yeah,
okay.
I think, not all of them have the capacity like a general contractor.
Okay.
So when that determination is made, our goal is to get the best, fastest, and cost-efficient work done.
Okay, that's good to know, because we don't want to see you expanding scopes just so you can get things added to a contract and get it done, as we've seen in some other agencies, which I shall not name.
Well, thank you, Senator, for your kindness in explaining that. I want to also express that what I say here is not a reflection on other organizations, but just how we manage our business.
No,
and
I think we appreciate government working and acting efficiently and how to streamline things and get things done. But we also have concerns of if you're trying to skirt the law or get around the law through loopholes or expanding the scope when it's really not allowed. And when those things happen, and then when you have some kind of accident or fatality, then that thing just gets magnified. So I think we want to give you folks as much flexibility and allow that, as long as it doesn't get misused, I guess.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, when I talk to my guys about this, I said, we're not parceling stuff, right? You give them a little of this and add some more and add some more. I said that ethically would be wrong.
Right, to get around
Right.
the bidding requirements. Thank you, Randy.
So Randy, I
Thank you,
have
Senator.
another question. You said this is following federal guidelines. So there is there something that you could share with us? Because we're always looking for better practices and lessons learned elsewhere. So is there a federal guidance on how you do this kind of contracting out for JOC program? Is that something that, has sort of how you do it and that kind of instruction?
It's not a national or a federal program. It is a national program that other municipalities have applied based on what my Ricky Fujitani, who went through the discovery of this process, because what we were looking for was an expeditious way to get the work done. When I first came here, I heard, why does this thing take so long? And I think Jan Gobea mentioned time is money, and it is, right? And that's why protests get expensive for us. I think the things that you have legislated this year, that 1% rule and some of these things help facilitate speed and limit the cost expense for the taxpayer. So in a lot of regards, that's good. But I will have that national standard sent to you, Senator, so
Thank you.
can kind of look at it. You should also know that we're having a discussion with our cousins at the city because they've seen what we've done with JOC, and they want to see how it can apply for them.
Yes, because this committee is looking at those kinds of, as Senator Kim said, how you do it timely, but you do it within the law, but we've got standards so that across the board, you've got fair, consistent standards when you do this. The other thing is whether there are criteria about what kinds of things, you said plumbing and so forth, kind of repairs and maintenance work, but if there's some kinds of description of the scope of the kinds of work that can be done with this, that would be very helpful as well.
I will definitely send that to you.
Thank you.
It's a good program. It gets us there quickly. When a roof leaks, you got to get there quickly, right? And this really helps us.
Yeah. Thank you. Members, Senator Kidani.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Superintendent. Randy, I don't see the bus contracts in here. I'm sorry, I only saw this morning, so I haven't gone through the entire thing. But are bus contracts in here also?
That might be.
No, the bus
Brian's
contract is not in there. We can send that procurement to you. It's. Oh wait, excuse me one second. It's in the data. Yeah, and we're sending it shortly to you, Senator. I'm sorry. Yes, it is in there. Chris Butt said it's in there.
You know what page it's on?
Yeah,
I guess what I'm asking is, I know that there was some difficulty finding buses for, I think it was the Big Island, and I'm not sure, how you guys are handling that. But can you explain bus contracts and how we're doing on all the islands, basically?
Yes, the problem we have is drivers. And so in this period that our bus operations have been somewhat limited, we do SPED. It's a federal mandate, so we cover that first, and then the other student transportation. So during this extended period, because of COVID, a lot of the drivers have found other jobs. And so when the bus companies need to call them back, they weren't available. So that's the problem. There's some that their licenses or their certifications have lapsed. We have, I think, about 16 on the Big Island that is going through that process. Fundamentally, it's background checks that need to be enacted. So there's fingerprinting. We are making progress. We're not there yet. So part of the addressing is adjustments on the routes, a little more extended time. We are not there yet. I think the last count, we were still down about 10, 12 drivers. The other thing we had to certify is on the SPED buses, we need an attendant. It's the driver and the attendant. So not all the attendants were certified and fingerprinted, so that limited the SPED driver. So we had to shift that again and move drivers to the SPED side. So we are addressing, we have had a discussion whether and I think you suggested it to us, whether the National Guard can help us, or I need to have a discussion with the Big Island Fire Department or the mayor to see if firefighters, because a lot of them have CDL, but there's a special CDL for student transportation. So we're working through that.
Thank you. And then, is there anything new in the bus contracts given the pandemic? Like, are they required to have some kind of sanitation, hand sanitizer or something on the buses?
There is a protocol which was established last year in March that we supply the bus drivers with masks. So when the child arrives and he doesn't have a mask, we provide that to him. In the earlier days when we were looking at separation, we had those seat separations. The very the very front two seats are reserved for a child that may look a little under the weather. Our practice is not to leave any kid at the curb. Right? The other thing we do, or the guidance from CDC and Department of Health, is open all the windows to promote the fresh air into the bus. Our precautionary measures, on some of all of the SPED buses, we have cameras, and if we have an incident, we can identify the child and our protocols, our notification and contact tracing kicks in.
Thank you. One of the other things I noted that you have, project time period, and many of these look like they're 2-year contracts, or contract dates have already expired. So, what happens to the funding, or are you guys automatically extending contracts for whatever reasons?
No, we've extended the contract 1 year. We're going back out with it. The challenge that the bus drivers or the bus companies are going to have is some of these vehicles need to be retired for student transportation. There's a finite life to the use of the bus. And I think last year or the year before at session, there was a lot of discussion because the financial burden on the transportation companies are quite significant if they have to buy all new equipment. We've given some grace, but we're getting to a point where we can't give that grace anymore. The buses need to be replaced.
Thank you. And I was referring to not just the buses, but all the contracts that you have where there are time periods, and it looks like we're nearing the end, or the time periods have ended, but they still have not finished the project. There's zero amount of the final cost.
Thank you. I will recheck that, Senator. But I know we're going out to contracts this year to recontract everyone.
Yeah, it would be helpful to get the start and end date, because you just have project time period, and a lot of them are either got a hashtag mark in it or blank. And then the ones that do have dates, it just has the date. You don't even know how long that project was for. So
okay.
Your Excel sheet, and then the dates of the original when it started, we can't even tell.
Okay, thank you. I think Chris Butt, my procurement guy, just sent it out to you, Senator Moriwaki, via email. So I hope that.
Can you forward to everybody?
I haven't seen it.
This just came in.
And one more thing, Randy, some of the projects don't name what schools these projects are for, and I think that's important for members so that they can check on their projects, what the status is. One of the ones that I noticed, I can't find it now, but when I first thumbed through it, it was a girls softball field. I know that Campbell had I don't know if they started, but I know also Middlelani, so I'm not sure which school that is for.
Okay, I will check on that. Yeah, I think we got like 4 softball fields. That's an equity issue. Waipahu is that field.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, but we will fill in those blanks. Thank you for noting that.
Thank you.
I think also, by giving the project period and the extensions, we know how long, as you say, time is money, timeliness of projects. Are they ending on time, or are they going overtime, and how overtime is it? And is it increasing the cost of the project or not? That data are really important to see. Are they on time and on budget or not?
Okay, excellent question. We will check on that. I will tell you that it has not been our best effort in that area. I know we have some contracts that are like 2 years past the allowable dates, and we keep leaning on them. But we've closed out some. We have now an effort that I have a specific person that's looking at closeout of all these contracts. And there's an incentive for the construction companies, because then their bond money doesn't get tied up. So it's good for them and good for us, but we want to make sure we're getting what we were paying for.
And if the project I mean, I think we'd like to hear your experience, because if the project isn't done timely and they're going with cost overruns or it's still, the project isn't done, how do you close that? And if there are additional cost overruns, how are you paying for that?
And we, I haven't seen so much cost overruns. I've seen the time. So one example I can use is we have a ongoing suit with the general contractor and the subcontractor, right, that has not certified part of their work. And fundamentally, it's a roofing work, right? So I'm asking my guys, how do we resolve these issues, right? Because we don't have control over the sub, but we certainly have control over the general. And my thought was the general needs to assume the liability of the sub, finish the job, and move on with this stuff, right? And what we would do, I would tell them that we need to probably put them on the B list going forward as we bid out more work until they get that thing satisfied. So that's what we're working on. We're trying to find an incentive that's not so negative but positive for them to get it done.
And I know that we passed that, as I mentioned before, it got signed into law by the governor, of past performance. It's an ongoing basis to evaluate the performance of contractors, so that when they do shoddy work or they aren't timely, that should be noted so others can learn from your experience. And it's also a deterrent, because then the contractors will do their job with quality and perform timely. So it's very helpful to get your experience and any suggestions on how we might move toward that, because I don't think the state has been performing well in that area.
Yes, and I would agree with you. The 75-day program that you guys put in place is really motivation for us. Once again, trying to crunch that shot clock down helps the contractors, helps us getting projects finished. So the two legislations that have impacted us last year, I know we had some trepidation about it, but as I continue to work with my team, I say, here's the value of that. So let's just go make it work. If we have other suggestions at another time, then we should bring it to your attention and come back to it if it's necessary.
We would appreciate
thank
it,
you.
because this committee has been working hard on that and helping to make government more efficient, but also, services out faster to the public. And so any kind of improvements in timely procurement and contracting, but also making them meet the standards, that it's fair and it's consistent and is done so that we don't have to do redos or have bid protests unnecessarily.
Yes. And you guys allow us, last year we let out $498 million in projects, right? We are a significant contributor to the economy of the state. The challenge we have is construction hasn't slowed down, and are we getting the value that we need to? That's a whole different discussion. But, business is good on the construction side. We understand supply and demand. But then we need to be more judicious about how we process our work.
Questions, members,
Sure.
have questions?
Yes, I have more.
Sure.
Senator Kidad, Senator Fabella. Senator Fabella.
Oh, yeah, I just, for what Senator Kadani was asking about, Campbell High School's softball field and combined with the baseball field, they started about 3 months ago and look like they're on time. But I just wanted to, thank Randy and his people, because when we have concerns as the community with Peterson's doing the construction on our parking lot and how crazy our school traffic is, we get some clarification on on our consultants. The one that I always bring up is two same consultants, but two different areas. Yeah. So the softball field, Sharon, the softball field is Bowers and Kubota. Yeah. So the softball field is Bowers and Kubota, and the parking lot is Bowers and Kubota. But the two guys that handling it is different. So the guys who are handling the softball field is proactive and involved. one that was handling the parking lot wasn't so proactive. It was taking a long time to get back to the contractor. That was causing a little delays. But when Randy came and him and his team had addressed this, we got this thing done so that the parking lot can now open up in a few days. Half of the parking lot is going to open up at Ilima. So that's a lot of thanks to Randy and his team. So I just wanted to bring that up when we're talking about procurement and engineering work with Bowers and Kubota in getting the job done in a timely manner.
I didn't get it either.
All right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Randy, we did not get the charts yet, the tables. Can you try to resend it again?
Okay.
We'd like
We're
to see it
chasing
while
down
you're
the guy
still.
right now.
We'd like to see it while you're still in the hot seat.
Oh, man. Oh, sure. I was just going to hand them off to Brian Hallett.
Oh, you were just starting to feel the love, huh?
I thought, oh, today's going to be a good day.
I have another question.
Okay,
I
Senator
spent
Kidani has a
hours-
question. In the meantime, Senator Kidani has a question.
Since I know you really enjoy answering all of our questions, do you do the procurement for the behavioral health stuff too, or is that someone else?
Probably Brian.
I think that's services, right, Brian?
Yeah, because I have a question on that one.
Hold it until Brian.
I will defer to my
Okay.
astute colleague, Mr. Hallett, on that one.
We'll
Okay,
save
then
it for
you're off the hook.
Oh. No, thank you for your time, and we will
Wait, I
be
have
fine out
another
with the
question.
charges.
You don't get off that easily.
Not already. Go ahead.
Who coordinates your training, and what kind of training do you have? Because we've been looking at how do we have consistency across all the executive departments. I know that UH and DOE are, have your own separate system, but it really comes under the same procurement laws, contracting laws. So how do we have consistency in terms of the system, because we're all using the same law and should be following the same law? How do you train, or who gets trained, and who touches your procurement and contracting in your OFO?
So Christian Butt is our chief person there. He regulates that or makes sure people are training. Professional development that also works through our Office of Talent Management. So we have this on file that the staff has properly been trained on a regular basis. And the challenge with training is that always new things come into play. Technology changes, how we manage that, and its application. So it's 2 points: Office of Talent Management and the director of that area.
So one of the questions that we had asked in the memo that went out for the briefing was to identify your procurement officers and also the training procedures. And all we got were the tables. So if you could also supply us with that, we'll have follow-up questions, but that would be helpful to get, again, looking at the trained staff and are they certified. It's important in terms of getting a good system together. You need the people who are trained. Senator Kim?
Just want to follow up on that training. So do you have a list of the staff that are taking training classes, and how often do they have to renew and take up new classes? Do you guys keep track of that?
Yes, we track that.
So you have a spreadsheet you can share with us?
Yes, we can provide that data.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay. And you
I
can
think
provide
if-
that to us, Randy, just send that to us, and I see Brian's still on, or might as well with both Brian and you send us the procurement officers and the training and how regularly they're trained and then what. That'll be very helpful.
Will do.
Um,
If I could comment and sort of respond to one of the questions that I saw or I heard Senator Kim talk about was the cradle to grave concept
Thank you.
that other departments are applying. We have 3 functional departments: planning, project management, and construction management. And that is not a cradle-to-grave operation. That is a specialization in planning, because that functions have different roles, project management and construction management. And this was set up before I got here. I can see its application because the folks in that one unit can really focus on what is most important. The difficult part becomes when they hand off the information to the next unit. So we are working real hard to make sure that handoff is clean, and the next unit that takes on the second part of the project, it has a full deck of the information. And I will tell you that's a difficult task, because there needs to be some form of standardization of what transfers to the other department. At the end point where construction management, that's the guys that really help us manage our change orders and our cost overruns. And those have to have a good degree of construction knowledge. So that's how we kind of manage it. Kurt Otogura and Ed Sniffen and I get together and we talk about this improvements. And I think there was another comment about, do we need architects, engineers, or is this project management? And generally, we are moving towards a project management function, right? It's not to say we don't need architects or engineers for the technical review, but we need to move the projects along. So we've had that discussion on what that should look like, and we continue to move in that direction. I know Kurt is having a discussion with Riker about how that job description looks. So, that's kind of where we're moving on the OFO side.
Follow up,
Yeah, follow up. So is the construction manager of the project is the one responsible for overseeing the change orders?
Sharon, I have one more question.
To a large extent, yes.
Okay, but change orders come from who? It comes from you folks, right? Doesn't come from the contractor can tell you, we found bones, but you have to make the decision if you're going to do a change order.
Correct,
right?
we make the call.
Right,
Whether
so the
it's
change
a valid.
orders is done by the contract manager, the construction manager?
They facilitate the paperwork, at the project, and I'll use Campbell as the example, that back parking lot that Senator Favela was talking about. What was not identified were these electrical boxes that were high above the new grade. So the question is, what are we doing with these electrical boxes? Nobody knew they were there. So the construction company goes to the project guys and say, what do you want to do with it? We've got to go talk with the consultants and say, one, why didn't we identify this? And what are we going to do with it? Because the first initial thought was we take them all down and put non-concrete electrical boxes, but the code calls for us to put those concrete boxes, it has to be concrete boxes, not fiberglass.
Right.
So that's a change order, right? Unanticipated by anybody.
Right, I think we all recognize the unanticipated ones. The ones we have a hard time with is those that either somebody don't like the design anymore, or somebody wants to increase the scope, or, those are the areas in which we're concerned about. And so you're saying that if you don't issue a change order, then there'll be no change order, right?
Correct.
Okay.
In our
So-
world, yes.
So the department and the entity doing the job has complete control over change orders. Because we always hear, we can't control change orders and so forth, but that's not true, because if you don't believe that something needs to be changed, and you don't issue it, the contractor can't issue it. So he
Right.
can't, increase the cost, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And we have to be, our people need to be much more firm on these issues. Because these guys want a change order, doesn't mean we need that that change?
Right.
What is its material impact to the project?
Right,
So the construction managers
Right.
are my front line of defense,
Right.
so to speak.
because these contractors anticipate change orders, so they bid low. And
Exactly.
then, when the change order comes in, then they can gouge, I'm not saying they're doing that, but they can gouge, and you gotta take it, because what are you gonna say? No, we're gonna shop for another guy, another contractor? I mean,
Yes.
right? You're stuck,
Yeah,
right, to
right,
get that.
right.
Okay,
Yeah,
can-
they got us pinned in the corner,
Right.
so to speak, right? So that's why the construction manager is so, inspector is so critical. But no, that doesn't warrant that kind of change.
So now, the contract manager is overseen by the project manager?
No, project management, and there's a mid-division in there with Christian Butt, our procurement guy, is called, project control, constantly watches the procurement, and then it goes to construction management.
Yeah, but who
And there-
oversees the construction management?
There's a head of this unit called the Facility Development Branch, it's the administrator, and they look at it.
Okay, doesn't it make more sense to have one person in charge of the entire project? Make sure all the procurement's right, make sure that all the stuff is right, and make sure, and so then if the construction portion or the procurement have an issue, you have one person that knows everything that's going on. If there's cost overruns, they're responsible. If there's personnel issues, at the end of the day, it comes to the project manager to have the control. But it seems like it's separate, and nobody, I shouldn't say nobody, but it doesn't seem like there's one person who then able to pull everything together.
So that's one school of thought, and you're correct, it has value when you're doing a limited amount of projects, right? When next year, we'll have 700 plus projects. So there's no way I can get a team to carry cradle to the grave. So I need each position player, so to speak, very good at what they do. And there, I will tell you, there's some holes, but we patch that, and we plus up our people saying, this is your kuleana, you gotta take care of this. You got questions, go backwards into project management and planning to say, hey, I got some problems here. If not,
I have a question.
I mean, we have a team of quite a bit of, the staffing amount would be significant.
Yeah, but I think you guys need to evaluate, at the end of the day, what might save you time and stuff. I don't know not having an overall project manager. Anyway, go ahead.
Senator De La Cruz?
Well, not that I'm defending it, but that's how DAGs is too, right? The way they have different processes.
Yeah,
And then it's a
that's why we have to
handover.
have a flow, yeah.
Part of, there's a difference, and we talked about this yesterday, between change orders and change of scope of work, which I think what Senator Kim was kind of alluding to. And oftentimes, I know one example. You provide money for the football field, and now the athletic director wants to add all this other stuff. So then it ends up becoming possibly change orders. So when the athletic director all of a sudden says, hey, I want to make all these changes, who authorizes him to talk to the contractor where the scope is now changed? Or does that have to go all the way up the flagpole to you to say, sorry, we're not doing that, or okay, that's reasonable? Where does that chain of command come in? And I know principals probably do that too, with libraries, with all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just talking from practical experience. I'm not trying to pick on anybody. Everybody here is nodding their head, so we've all probably experienced this. And it's all for the kids, but it's still not their money. Because we put in money for a certain, we're having a certain expectation. And I know plenty of principals, for instance, that all of a sudden you give money for an ag room, and all of a sudden now they want to do a kitchen, and they want to do indoor cleaning, and all that. But how does that go up the food chain?
So all these kinds of, we don't have many scope changes because we you gotta catch it at the very front, and that's an architectural issue. So I had a long discussion with Jan Govea, and she and I are not super fans of architectural changes, because then you're talking a significant change to the look and the cost of that project. So we've internalized this discussion, and the example I'm using is gyms, right? A gym is a gym is a gym. Okay, maybe you got a weight room, maybe you got a wrestling room. Why do we continue to have every time we do another gym, we got another architectural design, right? Where is the boilerplate, and how do we? So we're having that intense discussion internally, because that also goes to classrooms and to football fields and everything. We're trying to evaluate what when we partition the costs, what is design, what is architectural, what is, some of this, and where can we reduce? So the discussion we're working on is working with the University of Hawaii, is it CDC? Because it's a low entry cost
Still doesn't come
to
up.
do that, right? So that's kind of where we are, Senator Dela Cruz. We try to limit scope change.
I did,
Okay.
this is it.
Okay.
And it's like-
Because I think for the committee, that's a big issue, Sharon. Because a lot of it is really gonna be agreement on the initial design versus, and having everybody on the same page and flushing out everything earlier. Even I think maybe whatever, Ching Field or whatever, obviously it was the athletic department that said, no, I wanna go, instead of renting it, I wanna
something else.
fasten it down. So a lot of these things, for some reason, not everybody's thinking it out at the beginning, and then now they have to change it. So what about, where do you guys, so they can't, the principals and the athletic directors still have to get your approval?
Correct.
And so
Now,
when,
that's how we're looking for going forward. What they did in the past, I'm not sure, but going forward, those checks and balances are in place, that kind of scope change and architectural design change needs to be reviewed by us.
So do you have a procedure so that, if it's a change order or request, it's not done at the school or wherever the gym or whatever is being built, that they have to come up to have your approval, or somebody looking at, hey, this is a scope change, or this is just unforeseen circumstances they have to change? Or do you have some criteria like that would be helpful to have in terms of some standards for when a change order is in order or not?
Yeah, it comes up through it's all money, right? It comes up for approval through me. I'm the last stop. And I asked the question, what is this for? Why are we doing this, right? What's its material impact to the job? I've turned some stuff away saying, that's not in the budget, because what it's could possibly do is do a cost overrun, and we can't afford that. Now, there are some situations that may be justified, but another $2 million to the project is very difficult to justify, because we're probably on our way doing something, and if there's an architectural change, it may be affecting stuff that we have already put in place.
okay, but oftentimes the user versus your shop, the user is not on the same page with timeline that they have to provide input by a certain date. If not, they can't come to you after the fact saying, I gotta change. Because what I found in the past, when I did CIP, is the change of scope now kills the project.
Yep.
And so now you put in money for a gym or a library or the field, and now you get nothing.
Yeah, let me give you an example, Senator. Kihei High School, grade separated overpass. It was the means to have the students cross from one side of the highway to the other side. And it fundamentally is a bridge over the highway. And that requires, for us to open the school, requires the Land Use Commission to approve that. It has to be in place before we open the school. About maybe 8-9 months ago, We had a discussion with DOT because they're involved in that road, and comes back is we should do a roundabout. Their studies are showing that people cross at the grade. They don't go up. If it's another 15 steps, they are not going to go and use that. So Ed Sniffen and I had a discussion. We presented to the Land Use Commission. We're now in that process of getting the approval. But he cannot support that grade separated overpass for good reason. All the studies are saying they're not going to use it. They're going to cross at grade. So we need to provide a better solution. Now that's a reasonable change, but that's a little bit of a delay on the project. If we don't get that approved, then we're not going to be able to open the school in time. So that's an example of a scope change, but it's reasonable because students are not going to use that grade separated overpass.
Okay, so I guess at some point we're still having to really reconcile the difference between change order and
Yes.
change of scope. The other thing I wanted to bring up, and this has been brought up several times, but I think it was really highlighted in the UH discussion of adding certain things, even though
Something's wrong with my internet.
the description in the line item is broad.
Yeah.
So and I'll give you one example, and I think we've talked about this before. When you talk about plan, design, build, let's say a classroom, but then there's no infrastructure. So the language, so far in all my years here, the language has always been flexible enough or broad enough, just even with that, to mean that the monies can go for infrastructure. And so we're having this discussion about, bleachers and all these other things, and maybe the contract itself, how it was written, but the way the budget item is broad enough where it can include it. So I'm not sure how we go about changing that, and I don't think that it's even an issue, but how do you guys justify the infrastructure having to go in even though it wasn't explicit in the line item?
We are moving to a place that specificity is important, because when it's specific, I can determine that this is the scope of work, right? When you have multiple work on a campus, what does that mean, right? So we're trying to move away from that. Now, exactly what you said, some flexibility is desirable in this process, but there has to be some reasonableness to it, right? If it's intended to do ADA work, then it shouldn't be doing football field improvements.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so we're getting to that place very quickly, in fact. The way I look at it is, well, what I tell my people, if we were to go through an audit on this project, what is the auditor going to ask? What do you mean multiple projects on a campus? What does that mean? Right? So I think we have a greater need to get to closer specificity in terms of the scope.
Yeah, I mean, but yet you still want flexibility, because as I
Yes.
mentioned, you cannot have it only for the building and then now you can't build it because there's no infrastructure.
Infrastructure, right? Yeah, it's going to be a kind of interesting intersection when I look at more of these projects, right? What its original intent was and what did we end up spending the money on? I haven't been able to evaluate that yet, Senator.
Okay, but I
Sure.
tend to think more the latter, that it's the broadness to ensure that the overall concept gets completed is better.
Yeah.
I think Kurt had a question.
Okay, Senator Favela, you have a question?
Yeah,
bunch
Randy,
more.
you know when the contract goes out, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
When the contract goes out, he said, I put in the bid because the contract, procurement went out saying that I'm gonna be doing football field, okay? And now you look at my licensing and my ability to do the job and the work, then I get awarded the contract. But then, in the contract,
And I still can't get
I put in one subcontractor that's gonna do something else besides bleachers, something else. But it's not covered under the general contractor's license. That's another thing that we didn't look into. Even though you're the general contractor, you was a general contractor because you was doing a field. But if you don't have the licensing or the general contracting license to do bleachers or something else or stadium facilities, shouldn't that even also call to question?
Yes, Senator, where that gets kind of caught is in the bid process, right? So one contractor, because they, at a certain point when all the bids are in, they can look at everybody else's bid and they say, wait, this guy's not qualified to do fencing, so how can he be a sub for fencing? And that's when the protest starts. Our internal team looks at that, and if it's insignificant impact to the contract, we have an allowance to work away from that. But when it's a major part of the work and you're not a licensed plumber, then that usually DQs the bidder.
Yeah, so that's just something that Senator Kim always talk about, that these guys put in the bid and they don't even have the certain criteria of the license, but then they still get awarded the bid. And that's been an ongoing problem with, I guess, the procurement or the bidding process. So that's why I wanted to ask that question. Because some of these guys said they have the licensing and then they don't, and then it falls upon us, there's a liability. Thank you, Randy, appreciate it.
Also, Senator, in the PowerPoint, Christian Butt, our procurement person, in terms of where he thinks improvements can be made, is recommended in the PowerPoint. So we've internalized that. He does procurement all the time, 24 years in it. So he has some suggestions that I think we hope you consider.
So you'll send it to us?
It's here.
Oh,
It's in the
it's in
PowerPoint,
the
Yeah.
PowerPoint?
PowerPoint,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Senator Kim, Kirani, you have a question?
No, I'll pass.
So,
Let's move on.
wait, I did,
you,
as I
Senator.
said, no, not yet, not yet, not quite
Oh,
yet.
shit.
I know, I have a bunch of questions.
Okay, wait. So, as I said earlier, I had asked the State Procurement Officer, Bonnie Kahakoi, to also sit in, and she has a couple of questions, so if you don't mind, I'm going to ask her to ask those questions. Bonnie, are you connected? Oh, maybe you're letting.
She's here.
Huh?
She's here. I don't know if she's having computers.
Bonnie,
here.
are you on?
I'm on.
Oh, okay.
Hi, good
Aloha.
afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to go back a little bit and ask a couple questions. On the IDIQ, I know that you, Gordian, and the jock list, is there a dollar threshold when the IDIQ can be used?
That's a good question.
IDIQ.
If you don't mind, Bonnie, I'm going to ask Chris to respond to the more detailed procurement levels. Chris, are you on?
Yes, I am. Hang on a sec. Here I am.
Hi, Chris.
Hi. Hey, Bonnie.
Hi.
In all the excitement, you're kind of stumping me. I do believe that there's thresholds, but I don't recall it in the contract offhand. But JOCS is intended more for the, ongoing, like replace in kind. It doesn't really integrate well with permitting or jobs that require, formal design drawings or permitting. It can be used in those instances, but it's probably not the most efficient method. That's why we were looking at the MATOC RFP solicitation for, you know, traditionally larger projects, the ones that have design or planning or permitting. As you probably are aware, that's currently under protest, but we'll get there.
Okay, I was just wondering because I know some repair work can be extensive. So are we looking at, you know, following the small purchase threshold, or it could be go up to several $100,000?
Yes, it is solicited through an RFP methodology, and the JOC awardees have a master contract, so it's not constrained by any small purchase procurement methodology or limits.
Okay, a couple of other quick questions. I heard you say protests. Is there what is the basis of the protest? Has there been a pattern? Is it subcontractor listing? Is it licensing? I didn't hear how many protests you had, so I don't have a good gauge of where the issues really lie.
We received 19 last year. There's kind of a spread. If you look at later on in our PowerPoints, I think the second issue, that's something that it's been increasing concern that a number of protests are not a single issue. As you see, the protests filed by council, they're taking a legal approach to it, so they'll shotgun, and any issue that they can possibly raise, they will. So it's kind of hard to summarize. You know, in the old days, people used to just focus on the one item that they felt they were unjustly denied the award. Now it's more like they're kind of, especially a lot of the lawyers, they're gunning for the award on the technicality regardless of, you know, if they've been treated unfairly or not. At least that's my opinion.
Okay, thanks. If I could just turn it a little bit since I've got the floor. For goods and services, probably this is more for Lois. For goods and services, are the schools delegated procurement authority to procure on their own? Is there a dollar threshold that they can procure?
Hi, Bonnie. Thank you.
Hi.
So they are delegated procurement and contracting authority for things like small purchase, use of price and vendor lists, and then HRS and HAR exempt purchases. So for things like the use of price and vendor list, it would be limited by, you know, what was contained in the price or vendor list. And then for the HRS and HAR, you know, it would be any amount for certain dollar thresholds, though they would come to us to do a formal contract. And it is delegated by position. So, for example, principals, administrators.
So if they're delegated procurement authority to buy essentially what you're considering small purchase, do you require them to take procurement training?
Yes, so they are required to take training. Part of the training is for them to read the procurement guidelines, or guidelines for procurement and contracting. And then we have procurement modules. So it's an online self-paced course that they would take and then log their completion at the end.
Okay. And so the kinds of things that you do at your office is all statewide type procurements, maybe school supplies, office supplies, you know, furniture. Are those the kinds of things that you do?
So we might do some of those. The office supplies, I think a lot of folks might use the one that SPO puts out. But potentially, yes, you're correct. Any school or office statewide might be one of our program partners that we would provide procurement and contracting support for the formal projects.
So the principals do their own procurement. Does somebody assist them, or where do they get guidance?
Oh, this is the brief.
They're not familiar with the procurement process.
They might get guidance from their staff. maybe, their SASAs, their CABMs, their complex area business managers. We also try to emphasize, for folks who don't do procurement every day, to reach out to us. We're there to support them, so we emphasize that as our customer service for them to reach out to us with any questions.
Okay. And is there a legal team? Does DOE have a legal team that reviews these contracts regardless if it's, the goods and services or construction?
So we do have the education division, the attorney generals that we send our contracts to.
Okay. Thank you. That's
Thank
all I
you.
have at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Senator Kim?
So, Senator De La Cruz was talking about when the projects are increased, the scope's increased. What about when a project is decreased? For example, Farrington High School, as you can see from my mask, I am an alumni, and so is Michelle. Farrington High School, we love the field. It looks wonderful. You can see it when you drive on the freeway. However, we went through a lot of pain because the first thing they came to see me about was there's no money for the lights. So they were going to get a field with no lights. Was supposed to have lights, but I guess I don't know what happened, or I don't know, maybe it didn't supposed to have lights. So we would have had a field with no lights. You couldn't even play in the evening time. It didn't make sense. So we had to scramble to find money to get the, and we ended up getting money from the DOE Board of Education fund. I guess you have a construction fund when projects run under, money goes there. Okay, so that went along, and first of all, it took a long time to get it going because the poles that needed to be moved by the utility company, the coordination between that, and it took like 6 months, which was crazy. And finally, I had to call Hawai'i Electric, get them to the table, and then it started moving, which is not my job. That's a project manager's job. So I don't know what happened there. That's why I asked about project management. So then, before the school, the principals come to see me, and they say, you know what, there's no money for the visiting bleacher and the bathroom. And they're ready for close up the field. And if we had to open up the field again, I guess Castle High School had a problem when they had to open up the field again. It was never the same. And so again, we went scrambling to get the money. And again, we got it from that fund to get the money in to finish that project. And lo and behold, everybody, rave about the field, but had we not done that, had they didn't come to us, we wouldn't have lights and we wouldn't have visiting bleachers and a bathroom, and we would have had all kinds of other problems. So how do we deal with that?
Senator, I would, and was a little before my time, and we certainly appreciate the efforts that you put in to get them what they should have. I think the bucket.
Well, it's what the field should have, right? If you're going to have a field that have games, you can't play at night with no lights. If you're going to have a Kahuku Farrington game and they're all going to sit on the same side, you end up with a lot of fights. I mean, these are things that got to be part of the project, and how they move forward without it, it's beyond me.
Yeah, I would tell you it's a failure of scoping the project correctly, because when you're right, should have lights, should have bleachers, and why did we miss that, or who missed that?
Well, it's not necessarily missing, but if the project runs out of money or something, I don't know.
So there is a bucket called project completion funds.
Right.
And that's where it gets drawn from, but that is subject to cost overruns, and so that bucket could get depleted in one or.
Right, but that's the bucket we ended up getting money
yeah.
from, and we had to go to the Board of Education. Both Michelle and myself had to go plead with them to make sure that we could get the funding for that. But you bring up a good point, scoping, and that's one of the biggest problems we have with change orders, because the planning, the pre-planning, the scoping is done very poorly. And what bothers me is that we go through consultants. So it's the consultants that we end up paying millions of dollars for, and yet the job comes out incomplete, or somebody didn't notice something. And yet nobody goes back to the consultant and to charge them or whatever. Now, there's a such thing as a clawback with the consultants? You can only take 10% back from them, or?
I'm not sure. I haven't seen one.
Yeah, there's
in
something,
my
can you
short
guys
time here.
look at that? Because my understanding that
Absolutely.
10% is not enough. 10%, you know, when they make an error or something, is really too low. But, you know, we use these consultants, so who oversees the consultant to say, hey, you guys, you never put lights here? Or, you know what, what's happening here? Who's responsible for that?
That falls in the project management area, because there's a consultant selection process. Then once it's selected, they all sit around the table, the different divisions, and say, okay, here's the project, you've got an initial scope, let's talk about what we have or we have not.
Yeah, but again, who oversees that, right? Look at Hawaiian Airlines maintenance facility. The project manager, the project went, the 500 discrepancies, we paid them 85% because the consultant said, pay them, we paid them, yet they didn't do all the work correctly. I mean, so again, and what happened to that project manager from the state? Nothing. Nothing. They have another project, and I'm wondering what that project looks like.
Senator, all I can tell you is we're going to be a lot more diligent on that, and you know, have some stronger accountability path, because that's what is necessary, right? To hold people accountable, or the consultant accountable.
Okay, and then last question that I have. The construction manager is supposed to oversee the contractors and the workers to make sure that they are on the job and doing the job?
Mostly the contractor. He doesn't have oversight over the employees of the contractor, but he holds the contractor responsible.
Because I received an email, myself and Senator Kidani received an email from a very concerned resident who talked about a particular, and I'll share this with you offline, of a particular contractor who's doing work at DOE, and I noticed their name is on a lot of projects, and that these workers were observed spending many hours on YouTube throughout the day. They were, seemed like, says there was an endless flow of cash because the projects are from the state. The workers were quoted into saying that, you know, we work for the state, so, you know, we just go and milk them for as much as we can get. So how do we prevent that? Or how do we be accountable for that?
Well, I will tell you, it starts with my office from a leadership perspective. I spend a lot of time out in the field. I walk my offices at least once a week and encourage them to do the right thing. And they start goofing around, then I'll tell them, you got to stop that goofing around, because we have a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers of Hawaii. But I think that's a leadership issue, and getting out there and saying, hey, stop doing that.
Yeah, but you don't see it. You're not going to see everything, Randy. You know, you and I are not going to see everything going on. And so, I mean, it seems like it's a culture.
Right.
You know?
And so it's a repositioning of this attitude and this culture. And the next line is my directors, my direct reports who sit in those offices. And they should know that the direction from me is good communication and efficiency. And they're going to be held accountable for it. So, you know, I appreciate all the input. I'm telling you that we're not there yet. It's a little imperfect world, but yeah, we've all, you know, now that I've worked for the state, now I could be part of the butt of the joke of how many guys does it take to change a light bulb? Well, that's not what we want to do. We want to tell these guys, hey, this is what we need to do. We're bringing young talent. We're working with the University of Hawaii Engineering School, and we've got three kids in school to give them real experience. I don't want them to have that kind of attitude that,
Exactly.
Exactly. That's shameful.
Because
That's
the
shameful.
quote was, put as many hours as you can on the schools project because it's T&M, regardless of the actual number of hours worked. So, you know, it's like, you just take
Yep.
their time and they know they're gonna get a paycheck, they're gonna get paid. So I will share this if you wanna call
Thank
me
you, Senator.
directly, but I hope
Yep.
you will follow up to make sure.
I will.
Okay,
I
thank
will.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, members? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Tanaka. We will-
Thank you very much,
This is for my
senators. Appreciate it.
This is powered.
Oh, wait,
So
one
I-
more thing. Your challenges and recommendations that you see on your PowerPoint, you will, we have that, but we may come back to you in questions that we might have,
Absolutely.
if you don't mind. So that we can go on to Assistant Superintendent Hallett on the goods and services. Thank you so much, Randy.
Thank you.
Assistant Superintendent Hallett.
Can you hear me?
A little bit louder, closer to the mic maybe would help.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon. I wasn't sure if we were going to make it to my area. I
No,
don't
no,
think
we save time
this
for you.
This area is nearly as rich in interest as Randy's area, but let me just provide some quick context for the Office of Fiscal Services. We have about 100 folks in our office. We cover budget, accounting, payroll, vendor payment, leave management, child nutrition, and procurement. We're more of a service office, whereas Randy's office is more direct service. We support the work of the rest of the folks in our department, our program managers, our administrators, our principals. There are 10 people currently in the office in the procurement section. Vacancies have been a long-standing challenge, and retention of staff has been a long challenge for this area of our operations. Unlike Randy's shop, where delegated authority from superintendent to my office is further delegated to our director of procurement, Lois Mao. Much of the authorities are delegated further. So that authority that's retained at my level includes resolution issuance of procurement protests, determinations on procurement protests, resolution issuance of written determinations on contract controversies. And I have to say that over the last 2 years, that has involved 2 incidences, which I'd rather not get into the details of too much on procurement protests, just for fairness for all parties, but very willing to talk about those things offline. But I think the fact that there's only been 2 over 2 years is a reflection of the quality of work that's done and the support that's provided by this office, by our procurement office. So I don't know what else to go over. I think we had a lot of materials. We tried to pre-answer the questions that you folks had in the PowerPoint material. Lois had a big hand in preparing that. And so maybe best to jump straight to questions and answers if you have any. And I'm going to be looking to Lois to help with a good number of responding to those inquiries.
Thank you. Members, questions?
Yes.
Senator Kidani.
Brian, can you tell me what happens to services that you guys contract for and do not complete? And I'm looking at attachment A, page 2 of 10, where $40 million was set aside for, I guess it's behavioral health services. And probably only 2 million of the 40 million was spent over the last 2 years. So do you extend the contract, or does that money go back into the pot somewhere?
Yeah, let me, I don't have that list in front of me. I recall looking at that a couple of months ago and asking a similar question. That's an open-ended up to contract, and perhaps Lois can elaborate further, but let me just add to that. Our special education area, a lot of the funds, they move fairly fluidly between payroll and non-payroll, focuses on providing services that align with our IEP requirements, and we're structured that way, where monies are provided, but exactly how they're expended will be driven more by the actual requirements of students than by the contracts that have been put into place to tap into services that may be necessary to provide for IEP services. But Lois, do you have anything to add to that question?
No, it is what you're saying. These contracts are used on an as-needed basis, so it would depend on the services that the school might need.
Okay, what I'm asking is, what happens to the funds that are sitting there? Do they continue to sit there, or do you move them someplace else where it's needed? Because as you know, we went through a really tough budget the last couple years. And
Yeah,
if
I
you guys
think
are
what I'm
sitting with
saying or
this
was
money
saying
in the
was
bank or holding it for someone that doesn't look like they're gonna use it, shouldn't we know about it?
I think the difference is those are contract authorization to expend up to, but it doesn't mean that there are monies reserved behind that contract in an encumbrance. Monies are not, that's not the encumbered amount, that's the authorization to expend under that contract. So I guess what I'm saying is there is no reservation of money tied to and therefore sitting, waiting for those services to be tapped into.
I'm not understanding that, Brian. So if everybody, if you used all the funding that was set aside and you didn't have it sitting someplace, then how would you pay the bills?
Oh, I'm saying it's not reserved and set aside necessarily for only that contract. That's just authority to engage in those services, up to $40 million. Say, like, I believe our school-based behavioral health budget is probably around $50 million, and it's expended. A lot of it goes to staff, some of it goes to contract. That is just one contract that would probably be services that could be tapped into.
Okay, well, this $40 million, I think you have probably 10 or 12 different companies that can tap into this, but it was used by only 3 different companies for a total of maybe $2 million out of the 40. So I guess what I'm asking is that, why do you put so much in there if that's not going to be used? How do you look at it to adjust it for current funding? Because now I'm going to be looking at the next budget, and if there's $40 million in there, I'm going to say why.
Okay, fair question. Anything, Lois, on why we go in for such a high amount in the contract when not that much is being used, it's being used elsewhere?
So the decision on the dollar amount in the past, these were actually the first contracts that we were needing to put a dollar amount, and that was in consultation with the Attorney General's office on that part of the contract. We used to have it state, on an as-needed basis to the extent funded, but their advice to us was to put a dollar amount. And that is something that we work with our program partners, so the office that we support for these types of contracts in coming up to a dollar amount. On the, I guess, how it's used would be based on the school or office and, the school, and whether they would have the need to use that contract, and if the contractor came in, to be able to service that school. But it would be on an as-needed basis and up to that dollar amount.
So Senator, I can do further research and work with the program, find out exactly how much they have set aside for that contract, to get it. I think what you're really looking at to see is there money sitting unrequired in our budget? And
Correct.
I can tell you there's not, but let me go back and get additional information for you there.
Thank you.
Other questions? Anyone else? Questions? I go back to the training. I know that you've got in your PowerPoint slides that we have, that the Office of Fiscal Services, a PCB, has a number of procurement officers and you do training, but I'm just wondering, do you have an ongoing training program? Or, you know, as laws change, who manages that? Do you, Lois, to make sure that everyone who's touching contracts or is doing procurement has training, and who oversees that or monitors that?
So for our office, yes, we do, for the changes in the laws that, you know, would take place, and we do send out our notification, you know, email-wise, and the supervisors will then follow up with their staff members about the changes. For our procurement, our guidelines for procurement and contracting, we do update that every year, and if there is a need to update that part of the information, we would also include it in there. There are other professional development opportunities that we encourage and attend.
So, you know, at the school level, there is procurement being done, as maybe small contracts. How is that done? Does the principal or the SASA or somebody who's touching that, do you have a list of that and who's getting trained?
Yes, so there, upon completion, so part of the training that they would go through, so administrators delegated procurement and contracting authority for things like small purchase, they would go through training, and part of that training would be to read the guidelines for procurement and contracting, and that is updated each year. And there are also the procurement modules. Those are self-paced online modules, and upon completion of that, there is a log that is filled out for tracking.
I would add timing on that, which is within 6 months of employment, the procurement training is required, and then renewal every 3 years is our cycle to get retrained.
So if changes are made and the law's updated, is in between the 3-year cycle, is there some, I don't know, procurement updates or something like that? So at least annually there's some refresher or some way in which everybody still is on, because sometimes what we're hearing from other departments is that whoever the clerk is around is doing it, and we want to try to upgrade that and to have people, because it is a very complex and specialized field of how we can get really good people doing that so we have less errors and less problems.
So there's annual memos that go out and provide update. And people are encouraged, 3 years is the minimum that our folks are required. They're encouraged to go as often as they want. Once that memo comes out every year, people are reminded how to get into our online training systems and go through the class. I've done it more often every 3 years, especially early on. It is helpful and useful. But I think what's even more important is when it actually comes to getting down to a procurement in particular, when it's over 25,000, guideline is contact our procurement office and make sure you walk through the steps appropriately.
And is time off? I don't know how long these training sessions are. I mean, if they're like half an hour or an hour, but time allotted for, you know, rather than everybody's working really hard to process a lot, but giving time for employees and the procurement officers to actually take these classes and making sure that they actually have time to take it.
That's one of the messages that our Office of Fiscal Services promotes is ensuring and encouraging our principals to allow their employees time to go through what we call our SASA Academy and go through those modules. It is something that compliance and training is encouraged. It really becomes relevant for us. My experience is more on the fiscal, the budget side. One of the guidelines that we recommend people consider when creating their financial plans and determining their staffing is not to short themselves on the support staff, because that's when you really have challenges and people don't have time to do the basics, such as keeping up on training.
Members, any other questions? I just going back to the challenges and recommendations. I see most of those are, or all of those are construction related. Do you have anything in the goods and services area in terms of challenges that you have, Lois or Brian, on what we might do to streamline or improve the policies or processes that you folks use?
I think that we are able to work with the procurement code in how it is, and with changes that come to it. I feel that some of the challenge might be with being able to fill the positions, our vacancies, and then retain those folks.
Are you having problems recruiting and retaining? And is it you might have some suggestions or ideas of why?
Currently we have 3 vacancies that we have had out on recruitment. I think folks leave for different reasons. So, there's not one consistent reason, but I think as long as I've kind of worked in procurement, it has been a challenge, I'm going to say, to, have it fully filled, all positions filled.
Okay, members? Oh, Senator Kidani.
Brian, I know you don't have this worksheet in front of you, but I'm looking at page 8 of 10, a contract to Hawaiian Telecom to provide eligible network equipment to DOE and the library for almost $23 million for the period 7/1/20 through 6/30/22, and none of it has been spent yet. Do you know where that project is and what it's supposed to do? And I'm concerned particularly because of during the pandemic, when so many of our schools needed more network services for students, that it wasn't available and this money is sitting there.
Are you muted? You're muted, Brian.
Hello, can you hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Yes.
We couldn't hear you
Okay,
before.
Sorry.
Mm.
I apologize for that. I'm going to have to talk to our Office of Information Technology and find out what the status is on that. I haven't heard that we're having troubles with our broadband service contract. Let me go find out more on that for you.
Well, I'm not saying that we're having problems. I'm saying that could it have been, that's why I'm asking for what the scope of work was. Could it have been used to expand service? Because during the pandemic, we've had a lot of students who were not able to, hook up to their schools to get their digital learning done.
Okay, I'll look into that. But of course, as you know, we did focus on expanding service through hubs and MiFi, the hotspots, rather than through home service, expanding home service.
Yes, I understand that, Brian. But what I'm saying is this money was there and sitting there, and if we could have used it more for hubs and other things, then maybe we should have looked at moving it. I'm just wondering, what the scope of service was. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Follow up. Thanks.
Thank you. Others? Senator Kim? Okay. I think we have all the questions that we've answered. We will get back to you on questions. We'll send it to you, Superintendent Hayashi. Of some of the questions as a follow-up on the briefing today, and other questions that may have arisen based on our conversation. So, any last words from the superintendent?
Well, thank you. We will definitely follow up with what we need to, and appreciate your time in helping us to continuously improve on what we're doing.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Thank you very much. Thank you to you and your staff. Thank you,
Brian.
Louis, Ryan, Randy, wherever you are. There being no other business, this briefing is adjourned.